unimaginable. The sheer complexity of modern relationships sometimes defies our best attempts to label, interpret, or even understand them. Yet here we stand, peering into the heart of a particular puzzle. Why, despite appearances, women need avoidant men, but don't know it? How can such a statement hold true in the face of all our romantic ideals? Isn't the avoidant man the very one who keeps his distance, who stays silent rather than whispering sweet assurances, who retreats at the slightest brush of emotional intensity? But let us unlock this paradox together, a riddle that stretches back to ancient hunter-gatherer societies, threads through epic sagas of heroes and dragons, and winds its way to the complexities of 21st century living. Our cultural narrative frequently exalts the open-hearted, affectionate soul, the partner who shares intimately and swiftly. Yet, hidden in the background, there is another archetype, one that is typically overshadowed, criticized, or misunderstood. It is the man who stands guard on the outskirts of the tribe, sharpening his blade, scanning the horizon for threats while the rest of us celebrate or sleep. We see him as detached, too cool or solitary. We label him avoidant. But from an evolutionary perspective, this quiet sentinel might be the very reason the campfire burns safely through the night. In ancient times, survival hinged on more than mere brute force. A well-rounded tribe needed nurturers, gatherers, teachers, storytellers, and also watchers who could detect danger before it struck. When a predator lurked in the shadows or a threat brewed on the horizon, these watchers sprang into action, protecting the group from a lurking doom. While others relaxed, they remained vigilant. While others bonded in joyful togetherness, they reserved a piece of themselves, an emotional distance that fostered heightened attention. The rest of the group might have found this distance perplexing or frustrating. Why won't he join the feast? But in the long run, they benefited immensely from having such a figure in their midst. So it goes in modern life, though we rarely see it through that ancient lens. Let us explore the social, emotional, and even biological reasons behind why the avoidant man might be more critical to women, and to all of us, than we realize. And let us do so with stories that capture the essence of this curious dynamic, weaving through the vantage points of stoic heroes, misguided expectations, and shifting cultural norms that sometimes leave men wondering whether their guardianship is valued at all. We begin with the deep time perspective. Imagine a tribe of hunter-gatherers meandering across plains and forests some 20,000 years ago. Daylight hours were spent seeking sustenance, collecting roots and berries, spears at the ready in case of a chance encounter with wild game. Darkness fell early, and the night had its own mysteries. There might be a communal circle around a dancing fire, stories exchanged, laughter echoing against tall pines. But one figure is always set apart, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight's flicker. He's the avoidant man of his time, though the tribe knows him not by that name. They might see him as the silent one, or the vigilant one, or even the strange one who doesn't talk much. Yet when trouble looms, he springs into action. He has spent countless hours noticing every shift in the wind, every rustle in the brush. He's been psychologically rehearsing the worst-case scenario, so that if a threat appears, he is already prepared to defend the tribe. In this sense, his avoidant nature is not a mere quirk, it's a functional adaptation. Put differently, the group needs him. Some might resent his emotional distance. Some might wonder why he never fully joins the communal laughter. But they come to appreciate him when he notices the faintest track of an oncoming predator long before anyone else. He is attuned to danger precisely because he never allows himself complete immersion in the group's merriment. His partial detachment keeps him vigilant. Fast forward to a modern scenario, the primal jungle replaced by a boardroom, a suburb, or a digital network of friendships. Threats still exist, though they may arrive in subtler guises. Financial downturns, social betrayals, unforeseen catastrophes. Many thrive on closeness and emotional exchange, celebrating new engagements, promotions, or gatherings. The avoidant man remains cautious, reluctant to fully trust or confide, scanning for the next risk. The function is the same: to perceive potential hazards before they blindside the unprepared. At times, this mode of being is misread, criticized as antisocial, but one might recall that historically, a group lacking such protectors fared poorly. To illustrate, consider the old tales, be they epics, myths, or fantasy novels, where the hero sometimes stands apart. We might name him Jorge, a figure conjured from a mythical tapestry. Jorge is the man who smells a dragon's stench from miles away, while his fellow villagers sing and dance in the tavern. Everyone is perplexed by his grave demeanor, his refusal to join in their carefree ways. Yet when the dreaded beast arrives, it is Jorge who rushes to slay it, saving the villagers from certain doom. In the aftermath, the community praises him, holds a feast in his honor. For a fleeting moment, they see the value in his stoicism. They accept that his distant vigilance kept them safe. But as time passes and the memory of the dragon fades, they return to their old ways, once again labeling Jorge's demeanor as too cold or too serious. The cycle repeats. He warns them of a new threat. They ignore him until calamity is upon them. Then, once more, they rely on his unwavering readiness. Translating this dynamic into modern relationships, many women and men are attracted to the idea of an attentive partner who gets them, who shares every emotional nuance, who exudes warmth. This is, of course, lovely in its own right. Yet, ironically, some of these very women will discover they are drawn to an avoidant man's quiet confidence, his self-reliance, his calm under pressure, especially in a crisis. They may not consciously realize this attraction, but it manifests in subtle ways. A man who does not cling or overshare can appear mysterious, challenging, or secure in himself, qualities that can spark fascination. And in moments of real adversity, his ability to keep a cool head can prove invaluable. It is not that women desire to be kept at arm's length. No one yearns for indefinite emotional distance, but the traits often inherent in avoidant men, like self-sufficiency, measured calm, and a willingness to stand guard, can be deeply reassuring, especially when life's storms roll in. These men can be the watchers who see problems coming before they escalate into catastrophes. For the couple dynamic, this can balance a more emotionally open partner's risk of being caught up in the moment. The proposition is not that women need men who never communicate or never show feeling. That would be a caricature. Rather, we highlight how aspects of avoidance, low reliance on external reassurance, high self-responsibility, and I can handle myself mentality, carry adaptive benefits. The friction arises when these traits become extreme, creating a near impenetrable wall that a partner cannot breach. The trick is nuance. A dash of distance can be both intriguing and protective, but a fortress of solitude can be lonely for everyone involved. Furthermore, in a robust partnership, complementary qualities matter. One partner's emotional openness can encourage the other to explore feelings they might otherwise bury. Meanwhile, the avoidant partner's readiness to handle crises can foster a sense of safety. Each partner can learn from the other, bridging the gap between full-throttle intimacy and stoic reserve, forging a balanced approach to life's ups and downs. Now we step into modern society's arena, where masculinity is scrutinized, questioned, and often condemned in broad strokes. The once treasured notion of the protector can be dismissed as outdated, an artifact of patriarchy that some believe should vanish. The avoidant man's stoicism is, in some circles, equated with emotional unavailability or, worse, suppressed toxicity. We hear messages that men must be more emotive, more vulnerable, more collaborative. And indeed, there is nothing wrong with men exploring vulnerability. Yet, as a collective, We seem to forget that the ability to detach and remain vigilant has legitimate merit, a fact that was clearer in centuries past. Let us reflect on a pattern that emerges repeatedly. Society encourages women to assume roles historically viewed as masculine, climbing the career ladder, taking on leadership duties, even learning how to build shelves and do the wiring. Meanwhile, men, including avoidant men, are told to become more talkative, more expressive, more openly affectionate. The intent is often praiseworthy, to break down rigid stereotypes, allowing both genders to explore a broader range of behaviors. But sometimes, the pendulum swings in such a way that the innate strengths of the avoidant man get overshadowed, unappreciated, or labeled as mere stubbornness. Women who step into the caretaker-protector role may bristle at any suggestion that the men in their lives should also protect or guide. "I can do it myself," they retort, and if asked whether they have the expertise, they might perceive it as an insult rather than a genuine offer of help. This cultural climate can breed tension. The avoidant man, who once might have been revered for his watchful independence, now finds himself under suspicion for not opening up enough. Meanwhile, he sees that his attempts to offer practical help, fixing an electrical issue, assisting with taxes, or simply providing counsel, are brushed aside with accusations of paternalism or condescension. Over time, he retreats further. If his sense of duty is rebuffed and misrepresented, why bother? Consider how relationships so often involve a dance of power and vulnerability. The avoidant man typically evades vulnerability in personal matters, but he might excel at functional problem-solving. Society, however, has begun to mistrust or challenge the idea that men should fix things, particularly if it is perceived as overshadowing a woman's autonomy. In some instances, this is absolutely valid. No partner should overshadow the other or treat them as helpless. But in other cases, the scorn for male protectiveness can stifle men who are biologically or psychologically inclined to be guardians. It begs the question, are we throwing out the proverbial baby with the bathwater? Are we denying ourselves the benefits of that watchful, risk-averse, quietly protective nature that has served communities for millennia? Women who feel burdened by the pressures of modern life might be longing, unconsciously, for a partner who can be relied upon in a crisis. Not necessarily one who is always affectionate and verbally attuned, but one who acts decisively when the stakes are high. That is a form of relational security, albeit delivered in a less conventionally romantic package. The tension escalates when we consider that many women have indeed stepped into roles where they must handle everything themselves. The question arises, do they truly want to handle everything alone, or have they been culturally coaxed into believing that this is the only route to empowerment? If they do not want to relinquish any area of competence or independence, how do they reconcile that stance with the notion of letting a partner, particularly an avoidant man, fulfill the protective or guiding role he's wired to play? Let us delve into a small anecdote to illustrate the friction. Suppose a couple faces the prospect of completing their taxes. The man is thorough, methodical, perhaps possessing a knack for numbers. He quietly offers to handle the forms. "I can do it. I'm used to it," he says, rummaging calmly through receipts. But the woman, bristling at the suggestion, says, "I'm perfectly capable, thank you very much." She has never actually done the taxes herself, but is determined to prove she can. The man, sensing her resistance, withdraws. His avoidant side says, "Fine, I'll be over here if you need me." He invests less emotional energy. Meanwhile, she struggles, hits a snag, grows frustrated, and eventually storms off. Is he smugly pleased? Not necessarily. He might be disappointed his strengths were dismissed at the outset. Switch scenes. The electrical system in the woman's home starts malfunctioning. She decides she can tackle it. The man, who has some experience with wiring, warns her gently that it's risky. "Let me help," he offers. She reacts, "I don't need you telling me what to do." So he steps back. tries not to meddle. Perhaps she injures herself or calls an electrician only after hours of frustration. One day, if she's open, she may realize that his inclination to keep watch, to stay prepared for the worst, is a resource she can draw upon rather than reject. Such interactions may seem trivial, just tasks around the house, but they symbolize deeper relational truths. Women could benefit from that readiness and competence which an avoidant man brings. But if they automatically push it away, or interpret every offer of help as an encroachment on their independence, they risk never seeing that man's loyalty and protective instincts in action. Furthermore, the man, sensing that his practical or protective overtures are unwelcome, might double down on avoidance, concluding that it is safer to remain detached than to risk provoking conflict. From a psychological standpoint, avoidance is often linked to attachment style. In childhood, those who develop avoidant attachment have learned that their emotional bids are not reliably met. They might have had caregivers who downplayed their emotional needs or pushed them to be excessively self-reliant. As adults, these individuals prefer independence to vulnerability, distance to entanglement. Yet ironically, their experience also grants them a certain resilience. Imagine a young boy, taught early on not to cry or fuss, forced to fend for himself. The lesson seeps into his subconscious. Other people cannot be relied upon to provide comfort. He grows up hyper-aware of his environment, always scanning for potential problems. No one else will do it for him. That watchfulness might carry forward into adulthood, making him adept at noticing subtle shifts, at anticipating trouble, at containing crises. This can be a great gift, as well as a challenge in forming deeply intimate bonds. When such a man steps into the realm of romantic relationships, he may do so with caution. He does not want to be smothered. He does not want to rely on others. Yet if we brush aside or shame all aspects of his detachment, we risk ignoring the virtues that come with it. He might be less talkative about feelings, but supremely reliable in practical or even dangerous situations. He might cringe at the notion of endless heart-to-heart discussions, but be quietly attuned to external threats or household matters. If invited into synergy with a partner who values that part of him, he can bring enormous stability to a shared life. Now we arrive at the crux. Women do want love, tenderness, connection, but they also want a partner with a backbone who can handle adversity. The problem arises when we conflate the emotional expressiveness of a partner with their capacity to handle crises. We sometimes assume a partner who is warm and effusive is automatically more reliable. That is not always the case. Meanwhile, the partner who keeps a stoic front might actually be more dependable in times of stress. A woman might find herself frustrated that her avoidant partner refuses to engage in nightly check-in conversations about feelings. Yet she might be simultaneously reassured when that same man calmly navigates a chaotic family crisis or steps in when an emergency arises. The very distance she resents in ordinary times can become a sanctuary when everything turns upside down. She might reflect later, "I can't believe how calm he was. He didn't freak out. He took charge." Indeed, that calmness in a storm is often an outgrowth of his general wariness and inclination to keep emotions at arm's length. This is not to say that the relationship cannot find ways to foster more emotional disclosure. Healthy compromise could involve him learning to share glimpses of his inner world, even if it's done incrementally. Conversely, she might learn not to interpret all silence as rejection, acknowledging that her partner's subdued manner is part of his protective stance, not necessarily a withdrawal of affection. Over time, many couples discover they can exist in a dynamic where the woman's desire for closeness is balanced by the man's inclination to maintain a bit of space, both physically and emotionally. When the world is stable, they might strive for that midpoint, forging moments of connection. But when life lobs its curveballs, they each slip into well-worn roles that complement one another. She might gather social support or handle relational intricacies, while he readies for action to secure the family's well-being. Ethologists studying chimpanzees have observed that the dominant male, the one who leads the troop, must demonstrate both power and nurturance. He is the one who charges bravely at threats, but he's also the one who breaks up brawls among subordinates and comforts the distressed. If he ruled with brute force alone, the troop would not truly trust him. So too in human relationships. An avoidant man cannot rely purely on his stoic, protective nature if he wants genuine loyalty and warmth from his partner. He must, on occasion, exhibit compassion, approachability, and some measure of emotional presence. But reciprocally, the group's acceptance of him, be it a tribe or a romantic partner, allows him to exercise that protective function wholeheartedly. The group does not push him away for being too watchful or too strict. They see his vigilance as an asset. In relationships, the woman who recognizes the hidden gift in her avoidant partner fosters an environment where he can step forward in times of need, confident that his efforts to shield or guide will not be sneered at. He, in turn, might reveal a gentler side. Once he trusts he's not going to be demonized for his core personality. If the above analysis seems purely anthropological, consider the anecdotal testimony of countless women who say they are drawn to the strong, silent type. He's so intriguing, they confide. I can't figure him out. Or, he's not smothering, and I like that independence. In these statements, we see glimpses of a desire for a certain brand of masculinity, one that is neither overtly controlling nor entirely emotional. We might call it masculine confidence, but it can bear the hallmarks of avoidance. And ironically, it can be precisely what some women find attractive, even if they can't articulate why. Yet the flip side is frustration. He never tells me how he feels. I wish he would open up, or he can do so much on his own, but he won't let me in. Herein lies the conflict. Women relish the stability, independence, and protective aura that the avoidant man provides, yet they can feel shut out from his inner world. Striking a balance between these extremes is the relationship's ongoing challenge. Over many centuries, the need for men who can hold emotional distance for the sake of external vigilance was vital. In contemporary times, we might not face prowling lions and warring tribes daily, but crises still lurk. Natural disasters, financial collapses, sudden health emergencies. These are modern dragons. And in these moments, those avoidant traits, unflinching calm, methodical problem-solving, unwavering self-reliance, can be precisely what saves the day. Women, if they reflect honestly, might acknowledge, yes, it drives me mad when he seems distant, but I also can't imagine how I'd handle a real emergency without him. Of course, not all avoidant men are heroic watchers or stoic protectors. Some are simply absent. They might be so dismissive and self-absorbed that their partner cannot rely on them in any meaningful way. What started as a capacity for measured emotional distance morphs into a complete refusal to participate in shared life. Over time, the partner might feel as though they're living with a roommate who offers no empathy or involvement. In that case, it's hardly beneficial to say women need men with such an extreme approach. Healthy avoidance is a matter of degrees. Moderation is key. A certain measure of self-containment is an advantage, but a total refusal to engage with a partner's emotional needs is destructive. The point is not to celebrate unyielding aloofness. It is to recognize that some measure of reserve, caution, and self-reliance can be beneficial for both partners, particularly for the woman who, deep down, might appreciate the quiet watchfulness that a balanced avoidant man provides. There is another layer to consider, the notion of self-responsibility that avoidant men tend to embody. Because they do not expect others to meet their emotional or practical needs, they become adept at handling life's demands on their own. This can serve as a model of resilience, encouraging a partner to cultivate her own autonomy, assuming that is done in a supportive atmosphere rather than a detached vacuum. Moreover, self-responsibility fosters trust. If a woman sees that her partner reliably manages his affairs, finances, household tasks, commitments, without meltdown or chaos, she may feel a sense of respect. She need not mother him. He is, in a sense, always prepared for the worst. Admittedly, the challenge is coaxing him to share the load with her, letting her see behind the stoic mask. Yet fundamentally, a man who stands on his own feet is often deeply appealing, precisely because he does not add to her burdens. There is a cultural phenomenon to address. Many women now find themselves in roles that demand a masculine edge, running companies, managing large teams, making strategic decisions. They might fear that an avoidant man's stoicism will clash with their own drive or overshadow them. Alternatively, they might resent the possibility that his protective stance implies they cannot protect themselves. But a nuanced dynamic is possible. Imagine a woman who is indeed high-powered and successful in her career. She might appreciate coming home to a partner who respects her autonomy, but also offers a shield from the storms of daily life. He's not threatened by her accomplishments, nor is he competing with her. She, for her part, can recognize that her partner's wariness and vigilance might complement her more outward, bold pursuits. If she tries to do all of it, emotional labor, practical problem-solving, external success, alone, she risks burnout. Thus, the question is not whether women should or should not be strong and independent. It is whether they can find synergy with an avoidant partner who can handle certain aspects of life with unwavering calm. Such synergy requires humility on both sides. She must be willing to allow him to exercise his protective instincts. He must be willing to meet her emotional needs at least part way. Together, they form a partnership that merges her forward momentum with his steadfast vigilance. We cannot ignore that men, especially those inclined to avoidance, face mounting social disapproval if they appear too manly, too protective, or not sufficiently emotionally open. The question is whether these messages inadvertently suffocate men's innate drive to shoulder responsibility. If a man is criticized for offering help or for imposing certain boundaries, he may interpret that as a sign that his protective side is unwelcome. Over time, such signals erode his willingness to engage, leaving him even more avoidant. Yet ironically, some of these same critics may later lament the absence of strong, reliable men. They question, where have all the real men gone? The real men, perhaps, have retreated into corners, deciding it is less risky to remain aloof than to be publicly chastised for acting as guardians. This dynamic fosters confusion. Women, who might unconsciously yearn for that protective, stoic partner, find themselves at odds with societal narratives urging men to suppress these impulses or risk being labeled as oppressive. Another angle is how unprepared some individuals, women or men, can be when they step into roles requiring technical or survival skills. The text references electrical work or taxes, but the theme is broader. The avoidant man, by virtue of his self-reliance, might have spent time learning a variety of skills purely because he expects no one else to handle them for him. This knowledge can be invaluable to a relationship, providing security in uncertain situations. But if the partner reflexively dismisses his attempts to help, both lose out. She might slog through frustration and mistakes, while he stands by helplessly, uncertain whether to step in or step away. This tension can be resolved if each partner acknowledges the other's competencies and vulnerabilities. The woman might say, "I respect your caution and skill. Help me understand how to approach this safely." The man, in turn, can respond, "I'll walk you through it, but I respect that you want to learn for yourself. We can tackle it together." Now the dynamic shifts from adversarial to collaborative. She learns, he offers guidance, and neither feels diminished in the process. The title, "Women Need Avoidant Men, but Don't Know It," is of course a bit provocative. Not every woman will be drawn to an avoidant man, nor does every relationship revolve around these traits. But the overarching idea stands. Certain aspects of avoidance, self-reliance, vigilance, protective instincts can be deeply beneficial, and often these are precisely the traits that spark a hidden sense of security and admiration in women. Unfortunately, these men are also criticized or misunderstood for not meeting a more emotional blueprint of modern romance. The key, therefore, lies in forging a balanced approach where the avoidant man feels safe enough to express some vulnerability, and the woman feels safe enough to accept and welcome his protective or guiding side without feeling diminished. Achieving this balance requires honest conversations about mutual strengths, areas for growth, and how they can best support one another. It also necessitates a cultural shift in how we regard masculinity, recognizing that not all men must fit a single emotional mold, and that stoicism is not the same as callousness. One critical aspect we glean from studies of leadership, be it in chimpanzee troops, ancient tribes, or modern teams, is that a successful leader must be able to form real leadership bonds, as the text puts it. It is not enough to bark commands from a distance. Even an avoidant man, if he is to lead or protect effectively, needs a certain measure of trust from those he safeguards. This trust is best established not through fear or intimidation, but through consistent demonstrations of reliability and empathy. In relationships, that same principle applies. The avoidant partner might be the watchful protector, but if he never fosters genuine emotional connection, his partner may not trust his motives. She might suspect he views her as incompetent or clingy rather than as an equal. Over time, resentment grows. On the other hand, if the avoidant man takes steps to show that he genuinely cares, that he values her perspective, that he is not threatened by her strengths, that he is simply exercising watchfulness, she may reciprocate by respecting his distance, allowing him the mental and emotional space he's accustomed to, but also meeting him in moments of closeness. Ultimately, the premise is that avoidant men fill a niche. Just as a troop needs varied personalities, some extroverted, some introverted, some nurturing, some vigilant, human relationships often flourish when complementary traits come together. The avoidant man's reticence can be vexing at times, yet it often masks a deep sense of responsibility, an internal vow to rely on no one while ensuring the well-being of those he loves. Society might undervalue or mislabel this vow as selfish distance, but in a crisis, the worth of such a stance becomes evident. Women who embrace or at least acknowledge this dynamic might find themselves unexpectedly grateful. When the metaphorical dragon appears, be it a financial meltdown, a home repair emergency, or a sudden family catastrophe, the avoidant man's readiness to act can be a lifeline. He does not crumble under pressure, nor does he wait for external guidance. Instead, he calmly observes the situation, steps forward, and problem solves. So perhaps the next time a woman encounters a man who seems emotionally distant, she might pause before judging. She might wonder what hidden abilities or protective instincts lie beneath that calm exterior. Conversely, the avoidant man, if he wishes to keep her in his life, must learn that forming a modicum of genuine connection is not a weakness, but a cornerstone of trust. We have traversed the landscapes of ancient hunter-gatherers, the epic sagas where the stoic hero saves the village, the corridors of modern relationships fraught with role confusion, and the nuanced interplay of attachment styles. We've confronted the societal push and pull that leaves many men uncertain whether they should stand tall as guardians or step back lest they be accused of overstepping. The proposition that women need avoidant men, but don't know it, can be interpreted as an invitation to look beyond the surface. For some women, there is indeed a subconscious longing for the stable, watchful figure who can endure solitude, who quietly prepares for worst-case scenarios, who embodies a certain brand of masculine protectiveness. This longing may clash with modern beliefs that men and women should show the same emotional profile. It may also clash with a desire for constant emotional connection, but it endures nevertheless, rooted in millennia of communal survival, in which that solitary sentinel was often the difference between life and death. Yet the story need not end in frustration, with women lamenting their partner's distance and men bracing themselves for battles that may never come. In a world that thrives on synergy, the avoidant man can meet his partner halfway. He can unlearn the reflex to erect impenetrable walls, allowing moments of vulnerability. In turn, the woman can appreciate those watchful qualities for the blessing they often are, resisting the urge to view every protective offer as a threat to her autonomy. Perhaps then, the greatest gift of all is understanding, a willingness to see that not all men must function as open books of emotion, and that behind a mask of avoidance lies an instinct that can save the day when storms rage. Human beings are not one size fits all, and relationships flourish when each partner's strengths are recognized, cultivated, and respected. Whether or not one chooses to label these strengths avoidant, the crux is that self-responsibility, vigilance, and protective instincts remain assets, even in our modern age of technology and shifting social roles. In the final reckoning, women's relationships with avoidant men need not be stories of tears and frustration. They can be stories of partnership, in which the silent sentinel stands by the campfire, scanning the horizon, while she trusts him to keep watch, and he trusts her to join him in forging a new path forward, one that neither denies the power of emotional closeness nor dismisses the necessity of distance. This balanced interplay may be the key to a robust, enduring union, one that honors both the ancient call of safety and the modern desire for companionship.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.